$22,000 for a seized engine that could have been prevented with a $60 timing chain service. $4,700 for transmission replacement when a $180 fluid change would have saved it. $3,200 for a repainted hood and fenders after using the wrong car wash on Soul Red Crystal paint that could have been avoided with a $15 home wash kit. I'm going to show you exactly how to dodge each one. 1. The timing chain or belt disaster waiting in your engine bay. I've worked on Mazdas for over a decade now, and this is probably the most preventable catastrophe I see roll into the shop. An owner with a 2013 Mazda CX-5 came in last month with an engine that sounded like it was full of marbles. Turns out, they'd never had the timing chain serviced at the 120,000-mile interval. Here's what happens. Mazda uses two systems depending on which engine you have. The older MZR engines and some Skyactiv diesels use timing belts that physically wear out. The newer Skyactiv G and most other engines use timing chains that stretch over time. When a timing belt snaps or a chain jumps teeth, your engine's valves and pistons try to occupy the same space at the same time. Physics doesn't allow that, so something has to give, usually your valves, which bend and require a complete cylinder head rebuild. I had the displeasure of telling this owner their repair bill would be north of $4,000, and that was them getting lucky that the pistons weren't damaged. If they had been, we'd be talking about a full engine replacement approaching $7,000 installed, all because they skipped a service that costs between $500 to $900, depending on the model. Here's the part that frustrates me. Mazda actually puts the service interval right in the maintenance schedule. Page 6-4 in most owners' manuals clearly states the timing chain inspection interval. And for timing belts, they even put a specific mileage replacement recommendation. Check your specific engine. The Skyactiv D diesel, for instance, needs its timing belt replaced every 75,000 miles, while many Skyactiv G engines have timing chains with 120,000-mile inspection intervals. The sound of a loose timing chain is unmistakable, a rattling sound for 1 to 2 seconds on cold startup that eventually stays longer until it's permanent. If you hear this, don't wait. The difference between preventative maintenance and engine replacement is simply a matter of when you want to spend the money, a little now or a lot later. 2. Pouring the wrong oil into your precision-engineered Skyactiv heart. This might sound basic, but I can't tell you how many engines I've had to rebuild because someone used the wrong viscosity oil in their Mazda's Skyactiv engine. Last year, a Mazda 6 owner came in after an oil change from a quick lube place. The engine was making a terrible knocking sound from the top end. Here's what happened. Most quick lube places default to 5W30 for everything, but Mazda's Skyactiv G engines specifically require 0W20 synthetic oil, a much thinner formulation. Mazda engineered these engines with incredibly tight clearances to maximize efficiency and performance. The wrong oil simply can't flow properly through these precision pathways. When we tore down this owner's engine, we found scoring on the camshafts and lifters from oil starvation. The repair cost? $3,800 for a cylinder head rebuild, plus labor. The correct oil would have cost maybe $8 to $10 more than the standard stuff. Here's the part that gets me. Mazda literally puts a big sticker right under the hood telling you exactly what oil to use. It's right there on the oil cap too. 0W20 is cast directly into the plastic, yet somehow, shops still manage to use the wrong specification. My personal favorite was the customer who used conventional oil instead of synthetic because it was cheaper. That $25 savings turned into a $5,200 lesson when their variable valve timing actuators gummed up and seized. Always check your owner's manual for the exact oil specification. For most modern Mazdas with Skyactiv G engines, it's 0W20 synthetic. The diesel Skyactiv D needs 5W30, and if you take your vehicle to a quick lube place, physically show them the oil cap and specify synthetic. Better yet, keep the receipt so you have proof the correct oil was used. You might need it if warranty issues arise. 3. Fuel choice matters, especially with high compression Skyactiv G engines. I had a customer bring in their 2019 Mazda 3 with the 2.5-liter Skyactiv G engine. They were complaining about engine knock, poor fuel economy, and a check engine light. When I plugged in the diagnostic scanner, I found multiple cylinder misfire codes and knock sensor interventions. After some questioning, they admitted they'd been using regular 87 octane fuel exclusively since purchasing the car new. Gas is gas, they told me. Not in a Skyactiv G engine. It isn't. Here's the technical explanation. Mazda's Skyactiv G engines use a remarkably high compression ratio, up to 14:1 in some versions, which is almost diesel territory. High compression is great for efficiency and power, but it needs higher octane fuel to prevent pre-ignition, or knock. When you use low-octane fuel, the engine's computer has to pull timing to prevent damage, which reduces power and efficiency, the exact opposite of what these engines were designed for. In extreme cases like this one, the constant knock can actually damage the engine. This customer needed new spark plugs, a fuel system cleaning, and fortunately escaped without major internal damage. Their bill still came to $820, and they lost significant performance for years because they tried to save roughly 30 cents per gallon at fill-up. Mazda specifically recommends 91 plus octane, premium, for optimal performance in most of their newer vehicles. While the engine will run on 87 octane without immediate catastrophic damage, you're sacrificing the very thing you bought the car for, that perfect balance of performance and efficiency. The owner's manual is crystal clear about this recommendation. If your Mazda has a Skyactiv G engine, especially the 2.5 turbo found in many CX-5, CX-9, and Mazda 6 models, use premium fuel. The difference in performance, fuel economy, and long-term reliability more than makes up for the slightly higher cost. I promise. 4. The hidden battery that kills your iStop system. A 2017 Mazda 3 owner came to me completely frustrated that their iStop, idle start-stop system, no longer worked, and multiple warning lights were illuminated on the dash. They'd already replaced the main battery 6 months earlier, so they were convinced they had a major electrical problem. I checked the auxiliary battery hidden away in the trunk, and it was completely dead, measuring just 4 volts instead of the required 12 plus. Here's what most Mazda owners don't realize. Vehicles with iStop have 2 batteries. The main one under the hood that everyone knows about, and a smaller auxiliary battery usually located in the trunk area that specifically supports the iStop system during engine restart. This auxiliary battery is designed to handle the frequent cycling that would quickly kill a standard battery. It's a different technology, an AGM, absorbent glass mat battery, that costs about $180 to $250. But because it's out of sight, most owners forget it exists until their iStop system fails completely. The repair for this customer included not just a new auxiliary battery, but also a recalibration of the battery management system and clearing of several fault codes. Total bill, $520. Had they replaced this battery at the 4-year mark as Mazda recommends, it would have been just the cost of the battery. Here's where I get frustrated. The Mazda maintenance schedule actually mentions checking this battery's condition, but almost every quick lube shop and even some dealerships completely ignore it during routine maintenance. Check your owner's manual. Most Mazdas with iStop recommend inspecting the auxiliary battery every 20,000 miles and replacing it preventatively around 4 to 5 years regardless of mileage. If your iStop starts behaving erratically, working sometimes but not others, that's your first warning sign. Don't ignore it. 5. Aftermarket air intakes on Skyactiv engines. The Dyno Lie. A Mazda 6 owner came in with a check engine light after installing what the internet claimed was a 50 horsepower gain cold air intake system. Their fuel economy had tanked, the engine was running rough, and they swore it felt slower than before the modification. When I checked their system, I found exactly what I expected. The mass airflow sensor was completely confused by the altered airflow patterns, causing the engine to run either too rich or too lean depending on conditions. The oxygen sensors were working overtime trying to compensate. Here's the science. Mazda spent years perfecting the airflow dynamics of their Skyactiv engines. The intake tract, filter housing, and even the resonator chambers are precisely engineered to create specific airflow patterns across the mass airflow sensor. That silicon chip is calibrated to expect air to flow across it in a very specific way. When you replace that system with an aftermarket pipe and cone filter, you're completely disrupting those patterns. The result? The engine computer gets bad data and makes bad decisions about fueling. I've seen engines running so rich, they're washing cylinder walls with fuel, destroying lubrication. Or so lean, they're literally melting catalytic converters. This customer ended up paying $380 to have their original airbox reinstalled and the check engine light cleared. The catalytic converter efficiency code came back a week later, and they ended up spending another $1,400 replacing a converter that had been damaged by running too lean. That $300 performance mod cost them $1,700 in repairs and actually reduced performance. The frustrating truth: Mazda's stock airbox is already exceptionally well designed. Independent dyno testing shows most aftermarket intakes produce zero measurable power gains on Skyactiv engines, and many actually reduce power throughout portions of the rev range. If you absolutely must modify your intake, stick to drop-in panel filters from reputable manufacturers who actually test flow rates and filtration efficiency. 6. The forgotten differential fluid in all-wheel drive CX models. A customer with a 2017 CX-5 with all-wheel drive came in with a terrible grinding noise from the rear of the vehicle during tight turns. When we got it on the lift, the rear differential was extremely hot to the touch even after a short drive. We drained the differential fluid, and what came out looked more like metal flake paint than lubricant. It was black, had a burnt smell, and was full of tiny metal particles. The customer admitted they'd never changed the differential fluid in 80,000 miles of ownership. Here's the technical explanation. Mazda's Skyactiv AWD system uses a clutch pack to engage the rear wheels when needed. This system generates heat, which breaks down the fluid over time. When the fluid degrades, it loses its lubricating properties, causing accelerated wear of the gears and bearings inside. Eventually, the differential starts to eat itself from the inside out. This customer needed a complete differential rebuild, which cost them $2,400. The recommended differential fluid change they had skipped? About $120 to $150 at a dealership. What frustrates me is Mazda clearly states in the maintenance schedule that the rear differential fluid should be changed every 30,000 miles under normal conditions, and as frequently as 15,000 miles if you do any towing or live in mountainous regions. Yet, when I ask CX-5, CX-30, or CX-9 owners about their differential fluid, most don't even know their vehicle has differential fluid that needs changing. The transfer case in AWD models also needs fluid service, though less frequently. Make sure any shop performing your maintenance is aware of all the fluids in your particular drivetrain configuration. Those few $100s in fluid services can save you thousands in major component replacements. 7. Automatic car washes and Sol Red Crystal paint. The $3,000 mistake. This one hits close to home because I made this mistake myself with my wife's CX-5 in Sol Red Crystal. I got lazy one winter and started using a tunnel car wash with the brushes. By spring, the paint looked like it had been attacked with fine steel wool. Here's what's happening. Mazda's premium paint colors, especially Sol Red Crystal and Polymetal Gray, use a complex 3-layer process with extremely thin, clear coat layers. These paints give Mazda that deep, lustrous appearance that makes them stand out in parking lots. But this beauty comes at a price. They're much more delicate than conventional automotive finishes. The brushes in automatic car washes, even the ones advertised as soft, are essentially spinning dirt collectors. They grab grit from every car that passes through and then scrub that grit across your paint. For most cars with conventional paint, this causes swirls that are annoying but not devastating. For Mazda's premium paints, it's catastrophic. The repair? Professional paint correction can sometimes save it if the damage is light, costing $500 to $1,000. If it's severe, you're looking at repainting, which runs $2,500 to $3,500 for just a hood and front fenders. All because of a $12 automatic car wash that could have been replaced with a $15 2-bucket wash system at home. The solution is simple, but requires commitment. Hand washing only, using the 2-bucket method. 1 bucket for soapy water, 1 for rinsing your mitt. If you absolutely must use an automatic wash, only use touchless systems. Yes, they don't clean quite as well, but they also don't sandpaper your paint. Mazda's own documentation warns about this, though they're diplomatic about it. The warranty booklet specifically excludes damage to paint caused by improper care/repair, stones, gravel, scratches, or dents. They know their paint is gorgeous but delicate. 8. Transmission fluid. The lifetime lie that kills Skyactiv drive transmissions. A customer with a 2016 Mazda 6 came in with transmission slipping symptoms at 110,000 miles. The transmission would hesitate between gears, especially when cold, and occasionally wouldn't engage drive at all until the engine had been running for several minutes. When I asked about transmission service history, they confidently informed me that the dealership told them it had lifetime fluid that never needed changing. This is one of the most expensive misconceptions in modern car maintenance. Here's the reality. Mazda's Skyactiv Drive 6-speed automatic is a conventional automatic transmission with planetary gear sets, clutch packs, and hydraulic fluid that absolutely degrades over time. While Mazda doesn't specify a change interval in some owners' manuals, hence the lifetime confusion, the technical service information available to mechanics recommends fluid changes every 30,000 to 40,000 miles for severe service and every 60,000 miles for normal driving. What happened to this Mazda 6? The degraded fluid couldn't properly control the hydraulic pressure needed for clean shifts, causing accelerated wear on the clutch packs. By the time they came to me, the damage was done. The transmission needed a complete rebuild to the tune of $3,800. A fluid change and filter service would have cost them about $180 to $240 every 40,000 miles. So for less than $500 in preventative maintenance, they could have avoided a $3,800 repair. The frustrating part is the terminology. Lifetime fluid only means lifetime of the part, not the lifetime of the car. Once the part fails because the fluid degraded, the lifetime is over. It's marketing language that costs owners thousands. If your Mazda has over 60,000 miles and has never had a transmission fluid service, do it immediately. Use only Mazda's specified fluid. Their transmission is particularly sensitive to fluid specifications. This is one area where using the dealer service department often makes sense, as they'll have the correct fluid on hand. 9. Flat towing your Mazda AWD. Transmission roulette. I had a horrified customer bring in their CX-5 after it made terrible grinding noises following a camping trip. They had flat towed it behind their RV for about 200 miles without taking any special precautions. The owner's manual just said it's not recommended, not that it would destroy anything, they explained. The damage was catastrophic. The transmission pump had run dry since it only receives lubrication when the engine is running, and both the transmission and transfer case had severe internal damage. The all-wheel drive system was essentially cooking itself from the inside. Here's the technical explanation. Unlike some four-wheel drive systems with transfer case neutral positions, Mazda's iActiv AWD doesn't have a simple way to completely disconnect the drivetrain for towing. When you flat tow, all four wheels on the ground, the wheels turn the transmission and transfer case components without proper lubrication. The repair cost for this customer? $5,700 for a remanufactured transmission and transfer case plus labor. All because they misinterpreted "not recommended" as probably fine. Mazda's owner's manuals are actually crystal clear about this. For most models, it states, "Do not tow with all wheels on the ground. This may cause internal damage to the transmission." It's not ambiguous, but people still try it. If you absolutely must transport your Mazda behind an RV, you need a tow dolly for front-wheel drive models, or a full trailer for AWD models. The only Mazdas that can be flat towed are manual transmission models with specific procedures followed to the letter. When in doubt, don't risk it. A trailer rental costs $50 to $75 per day, compared to thousands for drivetrain repairs. 10. Cheap brake pads in Mazda's unique braking system, a rotor-killing combination. A Mazda CX-5 owner brought their vehicle in with terrible brake vibration after having brake pads replaced at a budget shop less than 10,000 miles earlier. When we removed the wheels, the rotors had heavy glazing and uneven wear patterns. The pads had material transfer that looked almost like smearing. Here's what happened. Mazda's iActiv AWD system uses the brakes as part of its torque vectoring control. The system will lightly apply individual brakes during cornering to help direct torque where it's needed. This is brilliant for handling, but creates unique demands on brake components. Those $39.99 bargain pads the customer had installed simply couldn't handle the heat, cycling, and precise modulation required. The semi-metallic compound glazed over from the frequent light applications, creating a hard, shiny surface that grabbed unevenly during harder stops. This customer needed new rotors and quality pads on all four corners, which cost them $780 installed. The quality pads would have added perhaps $100 to their original brake job cost. The frustrating part is that this happens predictably with certain cheap pad formulations. Mazda's recommended brake pads have specific friction characteristics designed to work with their intelligent braking systems. The aftermarket can match these specifications, but not at the rock-bottom price point. If you're getting brake work done, insist on OE equivalent or better quality pads, especially for AWD models. Ask specifically for pads designed for vehicles with electronic stability and torque vectoring systems. The slight premium pays for itself many times over in rotor life and consistent braking feel. 11. The rear caliper slide pins. Mazda's hidden rust time bomb. I had a 3-year-old CX-5 towed in because the rear brakes were completely seized and the electronic parking brake wouldn't release. The owner had noticed increasing fuel consumption and a burning smell for weeks but ignored it. When we removed the rear calipers, the slide pins were completely frozen with corrosion. These small metal pins allow the caliper to move freely as the pads wear. When they seize, the caliper stays partially engaged, even when you're not braking. Here's the technical issue. Mazda's electronic parking brake system applies force differently than traditional cable systems. It relies heavily on the smooth operation of these slide pins. When they seize, not only do you get premature pad wear, but the parking brake can malfunction entirely. This customer needed new calipers, rotors, and pads in the rear, a $940 repair. The preventative maintenance, removing, cleaning, and properly lubricating those pins during brake services would have cost about $30 in additional labor. What frustrates me is that this service is almost universally skipped during routine brake pad replacements. The tech will slap on new pads without addressing the pins, especially at quick brake shops. The factory service manual explicitly states these pins should be cleaned and relubricated with specific high-temperature brake grease during every brake service. If you live in an area with road salt or high humidity, have your rear brake caliper slide pins checked annually. It takes 15 minutes per side and can save you from a serious repair bill, not to mention the safety implications of partial brake failure. Pay special attention if you notice your Mazda pulling to one side during braking, or if fuel economy drops without explanation. 12. Coolant neglect in the Skyactiv D diesel. The $7,000 mistake. One of the most expensive repairs I've seen resulted from something seemingly simple. A customer with a Mazda 6 Skyactiv D diesel who never changed their coolant. They came in with massive white smoke from the exhaust and the engine running terribly. Diagnosis revealed that the EGR cooler had failed catastrophically, allowing coolant into the exhaust system, which then backed into the cylinders. The degraded coolant had deposited minerals throughout the cooling system, restricting flow and eventually causing the EGR cooler to crack from thermal stress. Here's the technical explanation. Diesel engines run hotter than gasoline engines and have additional heat exchangers for the EGR, exhaust gas recirculation system. The coolant in a diesel engine works incredibly hard, and its anti-corrosion additives deplete more quickly. When these additives are gone, the coolant becomes actively corrosive to aluminum components, like the EGR cooler. This customer's repair involved removing the cylinder head, replacing the EGR cooler, cleaning the intake system, and flushing the entire cooling system. The total bill? Just over $7,000. The cost of changing coolant at the recommended interval? About $150. Mazda's diesel engines have a specific coolant requirement and a shorter service interval than the gasoline engines. The owner's manual clearly states that Skyactiv D engines need coolant replacement every 120,000 kilometers, about 75,000 miles, or 4 years, whichever comes first. Many owners miss this different interval. Even if you have a gasoline Mazda, don't fall for the long life coolant myth. Yes, modern coolants last longer than they used to, but they still have a finite service life. Follow the service interval in your manual, typically 10 years/120,000 miles for most Skyactiv G engines, but check your specific model. 13. The rust perforation warranty claim. Dealer quote roulette. A Mazda 3 owner from Wisconsin came to me after their dealer quoted $3,200 for rust perforation repairs on their quarter panels. The car was 6 years old with 70,000 miles, and they were convinced they'd have to pay out of pocket. When I looked at their warranty booklet, I pointed out something they'd missed. Mazda's perforation warranty runs for 60 months regardless of mileage, but there's a separate anti-perforation limited warranty that extends to 72 months/unlimited mileage. their car was still covered. Here's what happens. Dealers often quote these repairs as customer pay because the standard corrosion warranty has expired. Many service advisors don't distinguish between the standard corrosion warranty and the specific anti-perforation warranty, which lasts longer. The customer took this information back to the dealer, and suddenly, their $3,200 repair was fully covered under warranty, all because they knew the specific warranty language. What frustrates me is the inconsistency. I've seen identical rust issues handled completely differently at different dealerships. Some cover it without question, others fight tooth and nail to avoid the claim. The warranty language isn't ambiguous, but it does require the customer to know their rights. If you have a Mazda with perforation rust that creates actual holes in the metal, not just surface rust, always check your warranty booklet before accepting a repair quote. Perforation warranty is typically 6 to 7 years depending on model year, regardless of mileage. Make sure you get a second opinion if the first dealer denies coverage, and document the rust with photos as soon as you notice it. The warranty requires you to report it promptly. 14. G-vectoring control sabotage. The suspension upgrade downgrade. A customer brought in their Mazda 3 with the G-vectoring control plus system after installing lowering springs from a well-known aftermarket company. They complained that the car now handled unpredictably, sometimes understeering severely, and other times oversteering without warning. The problem? The G-vectoring control system was fighting with the new suspension geometry. Mazda's system uses subtle engine torque modulation and targeted brake applications to shift weight during cornering, improving stability and turn-in. It's calibrated specifically for the stock suspension geometry and spring rates. When you change those parameters without reprogramming the system, the car ends up fighting itself. The computer thinks the body is positioned and moving one way, while the new springs have it behaving differently. The result is unpredictable handling, exactly the opposite of what the modification was supposed to achieve. The cost to undo this modification and return to stock? $860 for new OEM springs, mounts, and labor. The customer had already spent $650 on the aftermarket springs and installation. That's $1,500 total to end up back where they started. Here's what gets me. Many aftermarket companies selling suspension components for Mazdas don't mention this critical compatibility issue in their marketing materials. They're selling parts designed for cars without these sophisticated handling assist systems. If you absolutely must modify your Mazda suspension, look for companies that specifically address G-vectoring compatibility. Some high-end aftermarket suspension manufacturers provide specific instructions for recalibrating or safely disabling certain aspects of the system. Better yet, stick with suspension components from Mazda's own motorsport division, which are designed to work with these systems. 15. Direct injection carbon buildup, the invisible power thief. A 2016 Mazda 6 owner came in complaining of rough idle, hesitation during acceleration, and significantly worse fuel economy than when they bought the car new. They'd already had tune-ups, fuel system cleaners, and even replaced spark plugs, but nothing helped. When we scoped their intake valves, they were coated with thick carbon deposits, looking more like the inside of a chimney than engine components. This is a direct result of Mazda's Skyactiv G direct injection technology. Here's the technical explanation. In direct injection engines, fuel is sprayed directly into the combustion chamber rather than into the intake port. This improves efficiency and power, but it means fuel never washes over the back of the intake valves, like in older port injection designs. Without this natural cleaning action, carbon from oil vapors builds up on the valves over time, restricting airflow. The repair involves either walnut shell blasting, physically removing the deposits with crushed walnut shells, or chemical cleaning. This customer's walnut blasting service cost $680, but the transformation was remarkable. Throttle response, idle quality, and fuel economy all returned to near new levels. What frustrates me is that Mazda doesn't include this service in their maintenance schedule despite it being a known consequence of their engine design. Some manufacturers with direct injection have added secondary port injectors to help with this issue, but Mazda has stuck with pure direct injection in most models. After about 70,000 miles, every direct injection Mazda should have the intake valves inspected for carbon buildup. If you're experiencing drivability issues, rough idle, or decreased fuel economy in a higher mileage Skyactiv G engine, carbon buildup should be one of the first things you check, not the last. Preventative measures like catch cans help, but don't eliminate the need for eventual cleaning. Some owners report success with Italian tune-ups, occasional high RPM driving, and top-tier fuels. But the reality is that all direct injection engines will face this issue eventually. The most frustrating part, many owners replace perfectly good components like fuel injectors and coil packs, chasing symptoms that are actually caused by carbon buildup. Thousands spent on unnecessary parts when the real culprit goes untreated. Mazda builds some of the most engaging, reliable vehicles in their class. But even the best engineering can't overcome neglected maintenance or misguided modifications. The good news is that most of these expensive lessons are completely avoidable with the right knowledge and a modest investment in preventative care.